Hello and welcome to the World News on Voice of the People television. I am Chioma Innocent. Now, French authorities are appealing for calm following a night of violent protests in several suburbs of Paris, sparked by the killing of a 17-year-old boy who was allegedly shot dead by police during a traffic stop. Investigators have already detained one officer on suspicion of culpable homicide following the incident at around 8:18 a.m. local time on Tuesday in Nanterre. Now, that is according to a statement from the local prosecutor's office. The statement also said the three persons were in the car at the time of the incident. A passenger in the vehicle was taken into custody and later released, while another passenger, who is believed to have been involved, fled the scene. An autopsy and additional examinations, including a toxicology report, have been ordered by the prosecutor's office. Earlier, Paris Police Chief Laurent Nunez said that the officer fired when the teenager refused to follow police instructions. Angered by the teenager's death, protesters took to the streets in Nanterre on Tuesday. Images show firefighters extinguishing a burning car during the protests. Around 350 police and paramilitary officers were mobilized, mostly in Nanterre, to quell the clashes, which continued through the early hours of Wednesday. He said 24 persons had been detained. Celebrities and some politicians voiced disgust, concern and outrage at the shooting. Actor Omar Sy, star of the film The Intouchables and the Lupin TV show, said on Twitter, and I quote, "I hope that justice worthy of the name will honor the memory of this child." While President Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus has confirmed the presence of the head of Russia's Wagner mercenary group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, in his country. The announcement came 2 days after the mercenaries' 36-hour military insurrection posed an unprecedented challenge to the authority of Russia's leadership. Prigozhin's exact whereabouts are unknown. The warlord hasn't been seen in any videos or photos since he left the Rostov-on-Don military headquarters on Saturday evening, but satellite imagery by global monitoring company Black Sky shows 2 planes linked to Prigozhin landed at the Belarusian airbase outside the country's capital on Tuesday morning. Flight tracking data from Flight Radar 24 indicated that the planes landed near Minsk at around 8 a.m. local time. Both planes had their transponders turned off before landing, obscuring their exact landing location. 2 sources, one a senior European intelligence official and a source familiar with Prigozhin's planes, confirmed the jets are linked to the Wagner boss, but did not know if he was on board. Questions over Prigozhin's whereabouts have been circling for days since the Wagner chief's short-lived rebellion triggered a weekend of chaos for Russian President Vladimir Putin. On Saturday, troops from Prigozhin's private military group seized control of a military base and moved in convoy toward Moscow, facing little resistance in a remarkable and unexpected challenge to the Kremlin leader. The march was suddenly called off when a supposed deal was struck that would see Prigozhin move to neighboring Belarus, though Putin said on Saturday that those on the path of treason or armed rebellion would be punished. Russia's Federal Security Service, FSB, later announced it was dropping the criminal case against the Wagner paramilitary group. Then on Monday, Putin thanked Wagner fighters for making the right decision to halt their advance and offered them 3 options: to sign contracts with the Defense Ministry or other law enforcement agencies, return home, or go to Belarus. Now, the death toll from a Russian missile attack that struck a restaurant in an eastern Ukrainian city has risen to 8. At least 56 people were also wounded in the attack in Kramatorsk on Tuesday evening. The Russian missile struck a restaurant frequented by journalists, aid workers and soldiers who use Kramatorsk as a base of operations. The city lies only a few miles from the front line. 3 children were among the dead. The shelling occurred when people had returned from work, said Prosecutor General Andriy Kostin. He said 3 dead children were aged between 14 and 17. Ukraine's State Emergency Service said that rescuers continue to clear rubble from the site and search for more survivors. Ukraine launched the early phase of its much-anticipated counteroffensive earlier this month and have made minimal territorial gains. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced on Tuesday that Ukrainian troops have advanced in all directions. Russia has stepped up its air campaign in Ukraine, while the fighting continues along the front line. Now, Swedish authorities have approved a Quran burning demonstration outside of a mosque in the center of Stockholm on Wednesday. The burning will coincide with the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha, one of the most significant in the Islamic calendar. The decision to allow such an inflammatory protest may threaten Sweden's chances of joining NATO due to objections from Turkey. NATO officials are in a race against time to avoid the embarrassment of seeing the alliance miss its own stated aim of admitting Sweden to the alliance by July 11, the date of its next official summit in the Lithuanian capital, Vilnius. Officials fear that missing this deadline will send a humiliating and potentially dangerous message to the alliance's adversaries. Turkey, a strategically important NATO member due to its geographical location in both the Middle East and Europe, and the alliance's second largest military power, has proven the greatest obstacle to Sweden's NATO ascension. U.S. authorities in the state of Florida have announced aerial treatments to kill mosquitoes after malaria was detected in the southern United States for the first time in 20 years. A statement issued on Tuesday by Sarasota County noted increased disease activity in the area, saying it would deploy airplanes and trucks overnight to spray pesticides as part of an effort to stem the spread of the mosquito-borne disease. The move comes a day after the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention CDC issued a health advisory for malaria. While thousands of cases are reported each year in the U.S., primarily by travelers returning from abroad. The last time the country had a locally transmitted outbreak was in 2003, when 8 cases were reported in Florida. The latest cases were likewise identified in Florida, with a cluster of 4 patients identified in Sarasota County, south of Tampa along the Gulf of Mexico. A further case was found in Texas's Cameron County, which is also situated on the Gulf Coast. The Texas Department of State Health Services noted that the patient was a local resident who spent time working outdoors and had no recent experiences traveling out of state. The agency said the last time Texas reported a local incident of malaria was in 1994. Though the 5 patients in Texas and Florida have received treatment and are improving, the CDC warned doctors and residents, particularly in warm, mosquito-friendly areas, to be on the lookout for the disease. And finally, on the world news and VOP television today, a late life masterpiece by Austrian artist Gustav Klimt has sold for $108.4 million, making it the most expensive artwork ever auctioned in Europe. The Dama mit Fracture, which is the lady with a fan, was sold on Tuesday to a buyer in the room at Sotheby's in London after a 10-minute bidding war for a hammer price of $94.35 million. The higher final figure includes a charge on top of the sale price known as the buyer's premium. The sale price well exceeded the pre-sale estimate of $80 million. It also beats the previous European auction record of $104.3 million, £65 million at the time, including buyer's premium, which was paid for Alberto Giacometti's sculpture, The Walking Man, at Sotheby's in 2010. Previously, the most expensive painting auctioned in Europe was Claude Monet's L'Aubusson or Nymphaeus, which fetched $80.4 million at the Christie's sale in 2008. The Klimt piece sold on Tuesday was the last portrait completed by the artist before his death in 1918. The painting shows an unidentified woman against a resplendent China-influenced backdrop of dragons and lotus blossoms. The painting was last sold in 1994, going for $11.6 million at an auction in New York. Sotheby's said the buyer was the art advisor Patty Wong, acting on behalf of a Hong Kong collector. And that wraps up the world news on VOP television. We would like you to subscribe and engage us on YouTube. It is Voice of the People TV, and other social media platforms at VOP TV Live. Thank you for staying with us. I am Chioma Innocent.